Dr. Zelenko became a household name when he developed his world-famous Zelenko protocol. To make sure that everybody had access to his immune-boosting formula, he created Z-Stack, my family's immune-boosting supplement of choice. Along with Z-Detox, Z-Flu, and Z-Shield, Z-Stack has helped countless families stay healthy and protected. With every purchase of Dr. Zelenko's products, you also support the Zelenko Freedom Foundation in their tireless work to promote and reinstate medical freedom for all. Click the link down below, use coupon code INSPIRE to save and protect your family today. Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers, John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, and hitting the notifications button so you'll get notified about new videos when they are released. This morning I was out in the woods walking with our 13-year-old golden retriever, Jagger, and as so often when I spend time in the woods and in nature quietly, thoughts really come through me. I was reflecting on what we're currently observing in the world, the extreme riots in France over the last few days, but really over the last months and years that have been intensifying. I was reminded of growing up in Central Europe, where over the last decades, you've seen a huge orchestrated cultural shift. And the reason why I'm bringing up this subject is because when we look at the chaos in the world today, when we look at the war zones, and war zones can look very, very different. They can be something like kinetic in Ukraine, but a war zone is also happening in the streets where people don't get along anymore, where they constantly fight, and where cultural ideas are clashing. Why is this happening? And as I was thinking about this, I was reminded of supposedly 3 letters that were written by a 33-degree Freemason, Albert Pike. You might have heard of Albert Pike, a very famous man. And supposedly he wrote 3 letters to Giuseppe Mazzini in the 1800s, where he basically showed the vision of the 3 world wars. Now, I've researched over the years a lot about these letters, and really, if you narrow it down and break it down, most of the rumors about these letters aren't true. What you can really pinpoint it to is a book called Pond's Game by William Carr that was either released in 1955 or 1958, which would be after the First and Second World War. But I want to read quickly to you what the idea was in these letters, and then I'm going to get into why I think this applies today and what has actually happened and how we're actually being manipulated. So, according to the rumors, Albert Pike wrote, "The First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the powers of the czars in Russia and of making that country a fortress of atheistic communism. The divergences caused by the agents of the Illuminati between the British and Germanic empires will be used to foment this war. At the end of the war, communism will be built and used in order to destroy the other governments and in order to weaken the religions." So this was the first letter apparently written by Albert Pike. I'll get into why I think that's not really true, but let's move forward here. "The Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists. This war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed and that the political Zionism be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel in Palestine. During the Second World War, international communism must become strong enough in order to balance Christendom, which would be then restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for the final social cataclysm." So this is apparently the second letter. And here's where I always have problems. Words like Nazism weren't known until the 1920s, 1920s really. People didn't talk much about Islam back then. There were different terms. They didn't even say Muslims. They said Mohammedans, or there were different expressions for the religions also. So this is why I always believed that this information was manipulated. I'm not saying this information is inherently wrong, but it was definitely manipulated. And my theory is actually, which I'm going to share with you after the third letter, but my theory is actually that we are seeing glimpses of the truth, as always, being taken out of context and then spun out of control so people can later say, oh, this is just a baseless conspiracy theory. But here's the third letter. "The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agents of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the state of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on the issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. It goes on and on, but it pretty much very accurately really describes what we're experiencing in the world today. And this is why I think, and why I was reminded this morning of these letters. Here's what I think really happened. I think in the book Pawn's Game, he really touched on something that actually was planned. I believe these conflicts were planned much, much longer ago than in the 19th century. And then conspiracy theories are created because mis and disinformation, truly, it's a game that has been played for eons. But here's what I think where the real problem is and where it leads back to our current chaos in the world. The world religions as they appear today were actually created, and this is what I believe, they were created with exactly this end goal in mind. They were created to divide humanity into different sections and classes and belief systems. None of the major religions holds the whole truth. Everywhere, important pieces were subtracted, hidden, and left out, so people would continually buy into a religious system that automatically excludes all the others and that portrays superiority over the others. And this is where it leads back to what we're seeing in Central Europe, to what I have observed over years and decades myself. People from the Islamic religion, Muslims, were brought into Europe at a very, very high rate over the last 20 years, almost unchecked. And not all of them came into Europe to start a new life, to assimilate, or to live in a different culture. As a matter of fact, I would venture to say that a lot of them were brought in to bring about a new system to fight the holy war. And we can't simply assume that everyone is good-hearted and everyone wants to assimilate and everyone wants to live with the culture of the country that they live in. Oftentimes we see the exact opposite. They don't learn the language, they don't want to learn the customs, and they basically have taken over whole parts of cities in Europe where you as a Christian today, or actually as a member of any other religion, usually cannot go anymore. This is the truth. This is not propaganda. I've seen this firsthand many times. But I do not see the origins of this conflict in the 21st century or even in the 20th century. I see it hundreds, if not thousands of years ago, when the human family was on purpose deceived and divided with a very, very sophisticated plan. And right now, as we are in this state of great awakening, we must also go into the religious systems. This has nothing to do with God, has nothing to do with your faith, has nothing to do with your honest and real connection with the Creator. That is actually what all these religions, for the most part, try to disconnect you from. The religions are designed so you basically believe in the prophet, or you believe in the priest, you believe in the preacher who translates and who interprets for you because you are not worthy of receiving the word of God yourself. And this is exactly how you play societies against each other. So if we look at the conflicts today, we must really look into the mirror. And this is where it always leads back to. If we can realize that we have been had and we've been played for a very, very long time, we can start coming together and overcoming these apparent differences, because truly, if we bring the pieces back together from all corners of the world, this is also what the prophecies show. For example, the Hopi prophecies, that the wisdom of the corners of the world will be brought back together to the eternal cycle, and that we will have the big picture again. And that's actually what this time is really about. So we can either fall for the narrative and we can go along with these conspiracies and we can go along with the division part, or we can step into an energy of at least communication. If we can't do love yet, well, at least communication. We have to start communicating again and realizing that there is one force behind all of this, And this force is a very, very small minority. If we can realize this, then we can also come together and finally work really for peace and unity. Now, this sounds like a fantasy. It sounds like I'm talking about the unicorns and the rainbows. But I truly believe this because I see that people from all over the world are realizing just this, are realizing that they have been kept from the knowledge, from the wisdom, and from the truth. That's why we're here. So when we look at these conspiracies moving forward, we have to ask ourselves a question. Are they aimed at dividing us or uniting us? And that's where you always find the answer. Look at the people, look at those who are actually talking about uniting people, not under one world religion, not under one world government, but in a true cultural shift, not forward into something we have to reinvent, but actually returning to the true essential knowledge that we were all given inherently and that is still stored in our DNA. That's what I truly believe. That's our journey. That's what the Great Awakening is really all about. All right, Inspired Tribe, thank you so much for tuning in. You know we love you. We appreciate you, and we'll be back with you again very, very soon. Would you like to get access to exclusive content as well as being part of a community of like-minded people posting, sharing, and connecting on a deeper level? Come join the Inspired community on Locals, where we share more intimately and privately and do our Coffee and Truth live streams as well as our Honey Talks show, the only inspired show with Christine Nolan. The Inspired community is absolutely uncensored and unfiltered, a place for truth, authenticity, and freedom. Join us now at inspired.locals.com or click on a link in the video description.